Awesome. Welcome everyone to the Big Book Study. My name's Paige. I'm an alcoholic, and where we're going to be picking up is on page 151. But we will be doing some bouncing around right at the title, so prepare yourself to bounce. Emotionally, spiritually, buckle in. However, all right, so where we're picking up is page 151, A Vision for You. And this is exciting. We're rounding the corner, coming to the 164, and it's an exciting place to be. So the chapter is listed. The title is A Vision for You. And as you guys know, as we get into the later chapters, I really like breaking down the titles, because often we see the title and we think the whole chapter is only about what it says literally in the title, or we don't think about it at all. So when it says A Vision for You, let's talk about what is this vision that is being given to each and every one of us. So let's bounce. Let's kick over to page 14 in Bill's story, and let's see what the vision is that is being given to us. So I did promise some bouncing. So page 14. And it's right after Bill Wilson has his white light spiritual experience. And so it's the paragraph near the bottom, while I lay in the hospital. So that's the paragraph we're looking for on page 14, second from the bottom, while I lay in the hospital. And just give us all some time to find it, because I didn't count the paragraphs very well. I know, that's on me. But what are we talking about here? So Bill Wilson, in Bill's story on page 13, he takes the actions, the course of actions that would later become our 12 steps. And the result of that we see on page 14 is he has a powerful spiritual experience. In fact, it's often described as his white light spiritual experience. And he calls up Dr. Silkworth. He's like, man, have I lost my mind? And Silky's like, you know what? Even if you had, it's better than how you were. So you grab a hold of that bad boy. But this moment where he's free from the obsession of alcohol, where he's been changed and transformed from the inside out, this is what comes to mind. It says, while I lay in the hospital, the thought came to mind that there were thousands of hopeless alcoholics. And you guys know we've been emphasizing that hopelessness and how that leads to hope, that transition from hopeless to hope. So thousands of hopeless alcoholics who might be glad to have what had been so freely given me. And I talk about this a lot. One of the most surefire signs that we have had a spiritual experience, a spiritual awakening, is the desire to go help somebody else. And I always caveat that with, hey, if you don't want to help anyone, that doesn't mean go do it or don't do it. That means go do it anyways. We don't wait till we feel like helping to start helping. We help until we start feel like it. That's the order. My sponsorship style is very much rooted in that's okay. Do it anyway. I don't want to. That's okay. Do it anyway. That's how I show up. So it's a surefire sign that he has had a spiritual awakening. And it says, perhaps I could help some of them. They in turn might work with others. So as he has this powerful spiritual awakening, he's lying in his hospital bed and he has a thought, maybe I could help others. And maybe in turn they could work with others. And that is Bill Wilson's vision, carrying this message that these 12 steps will produce a spiritual experience, this message to others. And in this moment, back on page 151, that vision is given to each and every one of us. And that helps to give us context of what this chapter is about. What are we talking about? And the thrust of what we're talking about in the chapter of Vision for You is the miracle that can happen when we work with others, when we carry this 12-step message to others and they carry it to their sponsees and to further newcomers, and the fellowship that grows among us in that way. But as we dive in on page 141, we're going to see that, and we were kind of talking about it before the meeting, we can get some step one review wherever we go. There is always information. So regardless of where you are at your recovery, it's a perfect time to come to this big book study, because we're going to talk about what alcoholism looks like. So page 151, very first paragraph. It says, for most normal folks. Now, I'll stop right there and say, can't relate, never been. Don't know what that looks like. But for most normal folks, drinking means conviviality, companionship, and colorful imagination. And actually, as you guys know, today is New Year's Eve. Or for those in the UK, it's New Year's Day, bright and early, right? But for us, it's New Year's, and I do know of some loved ones who have referred to New Year's as amateur hour. You know what I mean? Yeah, careful on the roads. It's amateur hour. They're having a drink, and it's always so funny when you talk to a non-alcoholic about their drinking stories. Oh, God bless their heart. But it's also kind of perfect, that idea of a vision for you as we, are on New Year's. Because that vision gets to be the vision for us that we get to carry into this new year. The most powerful thing about Alcoholics Anonymous is I don't get it just to get it. I get it so that I have something to give away. And the more that I give away, the more that I receive. But I only know that if I do it. But when it talks about drinking means conviviality, companionship, and colorful imagination, well, we're talking about that conviviality, that sociability, that laughter, that joy. So for most normal people, that's what drinking looks like. It says it means release from care, boredom, and worry. It is joyous intimacy with friends and a feeling that life is good. Now, they are talking about normal drinkers, but I just want to pause and talk about what is it like when I drink. And I'm not talking about what it's like when I'm 12 in, or what I'm talking about like 3 weeks in. I'm talking about that 3-drink glow. It doesn't matter if that does not happen to you literally at 3 drinks. We know what I mean. I take that drink and I experience that. I experience that relief, that release, that ease, that comfort, that solution. I'm comfortably numb. I'm okay. I can fit and be okay in my own skin. Welcome. We're on page 151, first paragraph. And that's what I'm after. You see, I don't know about you, but I am a relief-seeking missile. Y'all know what I mean? Like, I am after relief, and I will sell everything that I got in my life to get it. That's what I'm after, and that's what alcohol is for me. It was the solution. It was the answer to everything that I thought I was missing. Welcome, 151, first paragraph, because it's the start of the chapter. And so I can look at when we talk about that cycle of alcoholism, we go after that first drink. That first drink gives us that sense of ease and comfort. And that's what I'm after. And I will point out, there were a lot of times that I was like, no, I'm a social drinker. I'm not drinking alone behind the dumpster, I've got friends back there, it's social drinking. Now, I know you very classy people cannot relate to that sort of thing, but, just in case you're here and you're like, no, I think it's social. We'll talk more about that. It says, but not so with us in those last days of heavy drinking. So let's bring our attention back to what our drinking was like right before we got here. It talks about the old pleasures were gone. They were but memories. Never could we recapture the great moments of the past. And I don't know if this is your experience, but that idea that ease and comfort, it never lasted. It never lasted. I'd take that drink and I would get that relief, that ease, that comfort, that numb. But the allergy would kick off in the back of my head and it would tell me more. And the more that I drank, the more that I needed. And I needed that next drink, but more than I needed that first. And it would take me, I'd drink and the louder that more gets. But what I would find is that ease and comfort would get smaller. That little moment of release. I would still get it, but it would just be an instant. An instant of gratification that never lasts. And so we're trying to recapture those moments where we were able to drink and experience that freedom from me, that freedom from how I felt, and the consequences weren't piling up. But that was gone. It says, never could we recapture the great moments of the past. There was an insistent yearning to enjoy life as we once did, and a heartbreaking obsession that some new miracle of control would enable us to do it. Now, when we talk about that obsession, you can write in your book, The Obsession of the Mind. And when we talk about a new miracle of control, which that didn't happen, with the word control, we can make a little note that that is the allergy of the body. So we were wanting and yearning for some new miracle where we would be able to just stop at 3 drinks or just stop at 6 drinks. That idea that somehow, someday we could control and enjoy our drinking. But we all know that when we had those times, if you ever had somebody that took you to an office holiday party, or, like a spouse that's like, hey, you need to be on your best behavior at this thing. And so you have like 1 drink, and inside it's in you, and it's like, man, and I am just holding on until I can get home and drink how I want. Oh, and I can go after it. You see, if I'm controlling it, there's no enjoying it. And it is agony. And if I'm enjoying it, man, there's no modicum of control. And that we know it from our lived experience, that doesn't exist. And even those times when it did, man, that was like a decade ago. That was a decade ago I was able to have 3 drinks. That's not who I am now. It's gone. It's gone. I cannot control the amount that I take. And so that is the allergy of the body. But when it talks about that heartbreaking obsession, what we're talking about is the obsession of the mind. The thought that we have when we are sober as we are today. But when our illness is untreated, a thought that tells me this time will be different. Nobody will ever know. I just got to get it out of my system. I'll drink on New Year's, but I'll get it together, for next year. We'll be saying that next year, the year after. But you know what I'm saying? That this time will be different. I believe the lie and off I go. And those 2 symptoms are what make up alcoholism. That is alcoholism. The inability to control it once I start every single time. And the ability to stay sober, no matter how much I need to, no matter how much I want to. That is alcoholism. And it goes on to say, there was always one more attempt and one more failure. And I prepared it, so I might as well. Let's talk about this cycle of alcoholism, because this is what we're talking about. It is the symptom of the obsession of the mind and the symptom of the physical allergy. That is what makes us alcoholic. But when we put this thing together, we see that this is the cycle that we're in. And when it talks about there's always one more attempt and one more failure, what we're talking about is after that attempt, the obsession of the mind tells me this time will be different. I'm going to control it. It's not going to get out of hand. I'm not going to get the DUI. I'm not going to lose my family. I'm not going to get kicked out of the sober living house. I believe the lie. I take that first drink. And why do I take that first drink? Because I need that sense of ease and comfort. I need that relief. I need that release. I need an answer to the way that I'm feeling, and it works. But it sets off that phenomenon of craving, that allergy, and it tells me more. And the more that I drink, the more that I need to drink. And off I go on a spree, and it doesn't matter how long that spree is. That spree can be a month, it can be a year, it could be, days, weeks, single evening. But at some point that spree comes to the end. And I come to, and I'm emerging remorseful. That feeling the morning after. I can't believe I did it again. And we're going to talk about some of those morning after feelings. We're going to talk about them as the 4 horsemen. But that emerging with guilt and shame and remorse and the pain that we feel and the guilt that we feel and the shame that we feel and this self-hatred that we feel, it leads us to the firm resolution, I'm never going to drink again. And I'm thrust into the spiritual malady. And the spiritual malady is not limited to alcoholics, but I talk about this because it's important. The spiritual malady is how I feel when I am sober. How I feel when I am sober and my illness is untreated. But that is what we treat in Alcoholics Anonymous. That's what the spiritual awakening brings a healing to. It fills the hole in my soul, and as a result of that, the obsession of the mind is lifted. But when we see there is always one more attempt and one more failure, after each failure I say I'm never going to do it again, only to have the thought come and tell me this time will be different. Nobody will ever know. And I do it again, and I do it again, and I do it again. And we see that we're stuck in this cycle. And how do I get off this cycle? How do I get out of this cycle? How do I get free? Well, what I need is a spiritual awakening. That's what I need. And that's the solution we have in Alcoholics Anonymous. And how I get it is the 12 steps. The 12 steps is outlined in this book. That's how I get off this cycle. Now, let's have a look at what happens the more we go around this cycle, the more we go around and around, around. It says the less people tolerated us, the more we withdrew from society, from life itself. Can I relate to that? You know, I'm starting to lose friends. I'm starting to lose loved ones. I know that I'm not drinking in a social way, and I'm trying to isolate, so I'm not ending up in these consequences. It says, as we became subjects of capital K, capital A, King Alcohol, shivering denizens of his mad realm, the chilling vapor that is loneliness settled down. And I have this whole talk that I did. This is like the previous Big Book study where I'm like, oh, I have this whole talk that I did that's based off this metaphor. I have a whole talk that I did that's based off this metaphor. I'll put the recording in the chat after. But where I sort of took that metaphor of King Alcohol and I did a sort of Lord of the Rings style talk. Because I probably have ADHD. I don't think it's probably. I just need to do something different. I'm like, woo! But when we talk about this King Alcohol, what is it? What the heck does the word denizen mean? That means citizen. And imagine, like, we have this mad king, and if you got the visual of like a Game of Thrones or the bad guy, I think his name's Sauron. I apologize profusely for Lord of the Rings fans because I said it. I'm like, I know I said it wrong. I'm gonna get some strongly worded comments. That is not how you say it. That is, Lord of the Rings. Get it together, Paige. I know. I'm sorry, but like you think the Mad King. Think of those visuals, and I'm just a little serf. A poor little peasant, and I'm out there just trying to stay sober, trying to do it on my own. And this Mad King takes me back again to the first drink again and again and again. Despite the fact that it is ruining my life, despite the fact that I need to stay sober, despite the fact that I want to stay sober, this Mad King grabs me and takes me back again and again. And it is a king with their full army. All the knights, all the king's horses, and all the king's men could not help Paige stay sober again. Didn't plan on that. You can tell it's been a weird day for me. I'm like, ooh, I'm surprised at what's coming out of, actually, to be fair, I'm always surprised what comes out of my mouth. I'm as shocked as you are. Delightful. Alrighty, but that's what we're talking about. Like, I cannot stay sober. And this Mad King takes me again and again and again. And when it talks about that chilling vapor that is loneliness. That loneliness, we know what that's like a fog and a mist that settles down. And it goes on to say it thickened, ever becoming blacker. That loneliness is something that is palpable. You can feel it. You can sense it. That dark cloud that hovers around us. And I don't mean to be referring to different talks that I do, but I have this other one. I think it's because I know that I cannot go and do them. I'm like, we don't have time, Paige, so you'll reference them to satisfy that tangent that you're not going to go on, but stay on task. I think that's what's happening, because it's me. So I have this talk that I do where it's a big book, Bounce Around, where we talk about loneliness. And I'll talk a little about it. The first time we see loneliness is on page 1, and it's Bill Wilson. He talks about, I was very lonely and again turned to alcohol. And what's my experience? My experience is that loneliness is the spiritual malady. That's what loneliness is. And I didn't know that when I got here. But I know that to be true because how often have we said and felt that we were lonely? and yet been around other people. See, I don't know about you, but I'm somebody, put me in a stadium full of other people, and I know what it is like to feel that loneliness. Heck, you can put me with some family, and I know what it is like to feel that loneliness. I've even felt that where I've, been in a room of Alcoholics Anonymous and felt that loneliness. And I don't know about you, I know what it is like to feel that loneliness in the middle of a relationship. And I know what it is like to feel that loneliness in the middle of an act of intimacy. See, that loneliness has nothing to do with a sense of separateness from other people. It has everything to do with a sense of separateness from God, higher power, the creator, the spirit of the universe. Yeah, that disconnection. I had a moment, I'm like, am I disconnected? I mean, spiritually, maybe, but like physically, let's see, because I was having a weird thing where it would go mute, but I wasn't muted, and people were like, we can't hear you. I'm like, why? Anywho, no, you meant, I know, I picked what you're throwing down. I got you. But so that's what we treat. And we know that to be true because in the 5th step promises, it talks about we can be alone at perfect peace and ease. And so what do? Is I clear away the stuff between me and this power. And that's the purpose of the 12 steps. 4 through 9 clears away that channel. And I continue to keep it clean and deepen that connection with that power in steps 10, 11, and 12. And so if we're here today, and I think I'm emphasizing it a little bit more. Well, no, because I have, an attention span of a gnat, but it's a fruit fly at best. But I'm also talking about it because it's the holidays. And I know the holiday season is tough. It's tough for a lot of people. And I'm not discounting that physical, palpable toughness. I'm not discounting that loneliness that is that physical separation. But my experience is that we can overcome that loneliness through the actions of the 12 steps. That's my experience. So welcome. We're on page 151, second paragraph, and which you might be like, girl, hasn't this thing been on for like almost half an hour? I know. We go at the pace we go. Alrighty. It says, some of us sought out sordid places, hoping to find understanding, companionship, and approval. So we have those people in our lives that are like, hey, I don't like what you're doing when you're drinking. Hey, I'm worried about you. I'm worried about your drinking. And we sort of get a little light bulb moment. Not the light bulb moment they are hoping that we get. They are hoping that there is a magical light bulb that says, oh, I think I might have a drinking problem. I should address that. No. That's not the light bulb. The light bulb is, oh, they don't like my drinking. I got to find some other people to drink with. That's the light bulb moment that goes clicks for us, And so we drink with people who will tolerate it, or we begin to drink alone. Is that my experience? And again, I'm going from the bougie dumpsters that I was frequenting to the less bougie dumpsters. I'm just kidding. The real rough dumpsters. And it says, so hoping to find approval. Momentarily we did. Then would come oblivion and the awful awakening to face the hideous 4 horsemen. And this is an allegory to the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. And that is, that's some apocalyptic language. That's an apocalyptic metaphor. Like, whoa, girl, like chill out with this 4 horsemen. But that's what alcoholism is bringing me to. Alcoholism is bringing me to the end of myself. It is bringing me to the end days of my life. And I can't see it. But we often, especially near the end of our drinking, get a sense of the reality that, man, I got nothing against this thing. So the hideous 4 horsemen, terror, bewilderment, frustration, and despair. And let's talk about terror, because terror is not that anxiety. You got a little bit of that social anxiety. I'm not talking about like genuine, like real bad social anxiety. I'm talking about like, it's a little people-y at that function and I'm not feeling it. So that's anxiety. But I'm talking about that terror. And that terror is that fear that comes from the pit of your stomach and it grips your chest and your neck. That is terror. That feeling that, man, I cannot make it another moment. That is terror. And then when we talk about bewilderment, It's not just a little like, wait a minute, where did I park my car? It is that I am so turned around, I don't know where to go. I don't know where to look. I don't know what is happening. What do I do? What has my life become? And I'm bewildered because it is unrecognizable to someone like me. And I'm just going to skip ahead to despair. Despair is more than a bad day. Despair is that utter hopelessness, that darkness without dawn. I do not see a way out. I do not see hope. Everything is too much. That is despair. I don't want to take my head off the pillow because what is the point? That is despair. And then I'm going to point out frustration, because frustration seems a little like it feels like the odd one out, like the Seven Dwarfs. It feels a little like Dopey, like, what are you doing here? Like, what? Frustration, right? And keep in mind, y'all know that I really like to joke when I work with my sponsees. It's only when it is apparent to me that they have a resentment, that they will do this thing. And I know nobody here would ever do this thing. And it's like this, they grab a thesaurus and they start to find every single word in that thesaurus other than a resentment. And they're like, it's not a resentment. I'm just a little frustrated. And actually, I got it keyed up and ready to go. I didn't think I did. It's not a resentment. I'm just in the right and they're wrong. It's not a resentment. I'm just irritated. And we pull out the, the synonyms and the thesaurus, and we're looking for all the words other than calling it a resentment. And if you're there, if that's your experience and you don't have resentment, but you got a lot of frustrations, or you're working with sponsees and they're like, no. I don't got a resentment. I just got frustration. So what we can do is I have for them the I'm not resentful, just a little frustrated columns. Now, I know they look eerily similar to the resentment inventory columns, but they're completely different. You can tell because in column 2, when it says, why are we angry? That's crossed out and it just says, just a little frustrated. So completely different 4 columns. This is, in the very little spare time that I have, this is what I do. I just make silly things for sponsees. So the point of it is, if it's a frustration, believe me, it is a resentment, and I got to get free of. And I'll make sure I put that in the chat after. I probably will need reminding because it's me. But when we talk, you guys know, When we talk about that frustration, let's equate it a little with pain. So there's that pain when you pull a muscle. There's that pain when you're really hurt. And we might want to label that as like, that's a resentment. And to be fair, when we're really hurt, we want to be like, but that's a justified one. Now settle down. We still got to do columns. I know. But what a frustration is a little like a pebble in our shoe. And we're walking, we're walking all day, every day. Who signed us up for the marathon? We're going. And that thing that at first is just a little thing begins to wear down and cause more and more pain and more damage. And that's what a resentment is like. Oh, it's just a little resentment that I'm thinking about and replaying in my mind all day, just like that pebble. It's going around and around. No, it's not a big deal. No, it's not a big deal. And it's going around and around. So I point that out because it's so easy to be like, no, I don't got to take action. But it is listed if you guys remember when we're in 2 Employers, it's listed as one of the greatest enemies of alcoholics. One of them is frustration. And one of the 4 horsemen of our personal apocalypse is frustration. So all I'm saying is I'm not telling y'all what to do. I'm saying I got to do inventory. And unless you ask me for help and I'm your sponsor, in which case then yeah, you do too. But everyone else, you got to make your own decisions. I'm just kidding. I can't make anyone do what they don't want to do. It's fine. Alrighty. And it says unhappy drinkers who read this page will understand. Can we relate to this? Can we relate to this experience? Is that us? And the thing is, I remember I have a twin brother, and when we were in contact, I asked him, I sent him a picture of this page, and he was like, is there anything that you can relate to on this page? And he was like, well, I mean, it's social, I guess. Do you know what I mean? That's what he related to. He's like, I guess it's social. We're twins, so like, you know, we're clearly related, but you know what I mean? I'm not so sure at times. So it goes on to say, now and then, a serious drinker, being dry at the moment, says, I don't miss it at all. Feel better? Work better? Having a better time. Happy to be here. Happy to be sober. Happy to be here. Happy to be sober. I'll take 24 and pass it on. Like that. That's what it's like. And I think we all know what it's like to feel that way, to be in meetings where we're like, I'm just happy to be sober, and we're just barely holding on. Welcome, we're on page 151, bottom paragraph, right? And that's what it is like when I'm trying to hold on and trying to white knuckle my way to sobriety. And what we're going to see is that white knuckling for an alcoholic is impossible. We'll do it for a while, but it's not going to work. It's not going to keep me away from the first drink. And it says, as ex-problem drinkers, we smile at such a sally. Now, Sally is often sort of referred to as we smile at such like a joke, but I looked it up in the 1930s dictionary that I have because I'm fun. I'm so much fun. And a sally is a sudden rushing forth of troops. So if you a sally would be like in a military where it's like a sally of the like infantrymen like going on the offensive. So it is like the best defense that I have in and of myself against the first drink as an alcoholic is, no, I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be sober. I'm working better, feeling better, having a great time. It's so good to be sober. And when we've been there, when we've been in that precarious position, we know it's like a house built on sand. We know it's crumbling. We know it's falling. We know it will not last. It says we know our friend is like a boy whistling in the dark to keep up his spirits. And that's what it is. We're absolutely terrified because we can feel in our gut the inevitability of the relapse. And we're just, no, we're going to be fine. And it says he fools himself. Inwardly, he would give anything to take half a dozen drinks and get away with them. Half a dozen? A dozen is 12, half a dozen is 6. For those that like, I would read this and not do the math. Is anything, give anything to have a 6-pack and get away with it. And it says he will presently try the old game again. And that he will is that step one experience. That step one experience that it is not a matter of if I drink again, it is a matter of when I drink again. If I have this illness, and if this illness is untreated, I will drink again. That's what it's saying. He will try the old game again. I will relapse. And it goes on to say, for he isn't happy about his sobriety. And I remember when I was relatively new, when I say relatively new, what I mean is like when I was in my first few years, I would go to, there was some local conventions, roundups as they're known over here, and there would be a speaker that would do like an emotional sobriety workshop. And I'm like, oh, that's for the keeners. Now, keep in mind, I now have a 1930s dictionary, and I got highlighters galore. I'm a keener. I turned right into them. And I'll be honest, I thought that emotional sobriety was like extra credit. You know, like those advanced classes that you can take in high school that go to like college credits or whatever. That's what I thought it was. I thought it, you know, for the keeners, for the nerds, that's me. And so the reality is that emotional sobriety is not extra credit. It is the curriculum. Emotional sobriety is the point. The whole purpose of the 12 steps is to bring about that spiritual awakening, which is emotional sobriety. And I mean, that's rude, because I was kind of hoping I could go do something else, I was kind of hoping I could, like, could I read some other books? Could I do something else? No. But emotional sobriety is the point. And if I do not experience emotional sobriety, I will drink again, just to be overly abundantly clear. How I get to emotional sobriety, how I get to permanent recovery, is that I work these 12 steps as a way of life, like my life depends on it, because it does. That's how I get there. And it says he cannot picture life without alcohol. Someday, he will be unable to imagine life either with alcohol or without it. That place, if I can't live with it, I can't live without it. What does that look like? It looks like I need to stay sober. I want to stay sober. I have to stay sober because I see that I've got the allergy of the body. And once I start, I burn my life to the ground. I cross these lines I said I would never cross. I hurt people in ways that I don't want to hurt people. I cannot control the amount that I drink. I want to stay sober, but I can't stay sober. And that's because I have the obsession of the mind. That thought that happens when I'm sober that takes me back again and again to that first drink. So I have to stay sober, but I can't stay sober. I want to stay sober, but I can't stay sober. I need to stay sober, but I can't stay sober. And that's what we're talking about. Unable to live without it and unable to live with it. That is our experience. And it says, then he will know loneliness, such as few do. That loneliness, that emptiness, that coming to the end of myself. And it says he will be at the jumping off place. He will wish for the end. Now, only in Alcoholics Anonymous is that a good place to get to. There's no other place where it's like, I'm at the jumping off place. I'm wishing for the end. Welcome, we're on page 152. At no point in anywhere else would people be like, oh boy, that's great news. They'd be like, yikes, that's a problem. But here in Alcoholics Anonymous, that is a perfect place to be. That coming to the end of myself, that jumping off place. Because that's where the change can happen. And man, I feel like bouncing around. So let's do it. Let's bounce. It's not going to be too much. We're just going to go to page 59. And because I want to talk more about that jumping off place. And I want to talk about what it is like to be there. And so it's going to be 59. It is that first full paragraph where it says, half measures availed us nothing. Which is rude, because I will say, I feel like I should at least get something for something. If I did half, I should at least get a quarter out of it. You know what I'm saying? But half measures availed us nothing. We stood at the turning point. We asked his protection and care with complete abandon, and that's a prayer. Anytime in this book it says we ask, that's a prayer. And so it's a tie-in to what we're seeing on page 152. We stood at the turning point, where we stood at the edge. We're standing at the end, and we're come to the end of ourselves. And so I have this metaphor. And it is alcoholism is a lot like a monster in the forest. And I am trying to outrun that monster. And I am running with everything that is in me. And that monster, that obsession of the mind, comes and it barrels down and it gets me and it takes a swipe. And I take a drink. And I get beaten down. And I scrape myself up. And I start running again. And I say, I'm not going to do it again. And that monster comes. That obsession of the mind comes and it takes a swipe. And I take a drink and I'm beaten down. And I scrape myself up. And what we're noticing in this metaphor is that I'm running. I'm trying different things, and maybe I stop running, maybe I start hiding. And I try to hide in a cave or in a hollowed out log, and I'm trying to hide from this thing. But the obsession of the mind, it always finds me. And it takes a swipe, and I take a drink, and off I go. And I'm beaten and I'm broken. And I've been doing this for a long time. And I'm trying to outrun it. And I'm trying to hide from it. And I sense that I got nothing. And by some miracle and miracles, I make my way out to a clearing. And I run to the edge of that clearing. And I find myself at the edge of a cliff. And I look behind me and I see that monster. And there is nothing between me and that monster. And I can see that beyond a shadow of a doubt. And that's that step one experience. I can see that monster coming. I can see that it is not a matter of if, or it is not a matter of if, but when I'm going to drink again. It's coming. I can't stop it. And I then look over the edge of the cliff, and what do I see? I see a cloud of unknowing, to borrow a medieval meditative textbook, their name, the cloud of unknowing. And what I mean by that is I look over the edge of this cliff and there's this cloud, and I can't see beyond the cloud. I can't see what's on the other side. But what I hear is I hear your voices, and I hear your voices saying, jump, jump. Take that leap of faith. We promise it is worth it. And because I have that step one experience, I see that monster is barreling down and there is nothing I can do to stop it. I look over the edge of the cliff and there's nothing I can do but trust in those voices that I hear. Trust that you guys aren't lying to me about your experience. And I take that leap. And that leap of faith is the 12 steps. That's what I do. I decide to jump in step 3. I actually begin to jump as I write on my step 4. I begin to fall as I write, but write my 4, as I share my 5th step, as I do my quiet hour, and then my 6 and 7. I'm falling as I do my 8 and 9 and go out and make amends. And what happens is I find myself caught. I'm caught. I land safely and securely in God's hands. And how I stay there is steps 10, 11, and 12. And that's what I get to do. And so when we talk about that jumping off place, it's not just a little bit of a timber, like a fall. It is a leap, because I know I got to get away from that inevitable drink. And I got to find the solution that you found. And I've got to jump with complete abandon. And I've got to leap to have that experience that you guys have had. What I'm talking about is I got to go through these steps quickly and thoroughly. And those two things work together to have the experience that you've had. And so it says, we have shown so back on page 152. Sorry, I do that. I'll go back to the page and forgot to tell everybody that I'm back at the page. Sorry, back on 152. First full paragraph. So it says, we have shown how we got out from under. And how did we get out from that impossible situation? What did they show us? How we got out from under is the 12 steps. That's how we got out from under. And that's what they showed us from their lived experience. When the 12 steps were listed on page 59, I won't make us go back there. But they were all written in past tense plural, because it is what the first 180 members of Alcoholics Anonymous did. It's a report of the actions that they took. And it is a report of the actions that each and every one of us who have recovered have taken and continue to take. That's what it is. So that's how we get out from under. That's how we get free. And it says, and I love this because you guys know I talk about so much how the book meets us where we're at. It meets us where we're at and it takes us where we need to go. Because I think we've all felt this way. Many of us have said this, especially when we are new. It says, you say, yes, I am willing. But am I to be consigned to a life where I shall be stupid, boring, and glum? Like some righteous people I see, right? I don't want to be not cool like you, Paige. I've had people like, listen, I don't want to be like you. And I'm like, you did ask me for help. I'm just going to point that one out. But I know I must get along without liquor, but how can I? Have you a sufficient substitute? So the book is going to meet us right where we're at, because we acknowledge that sobriety is not a solution to our alcoholism. We sense that that's true. And we know that because every time we drank again, every time we relapsed, we were sober. So sobriety cannot be a solution to my alcoholism. So what is the solution? What is the sufficient substitute? And here's what it is. And this is part of why I emphasize the title and what the title is talking about when it says a vision for you. You see, if I don't find a sufficient substitute, if I don't find a way to experience that sense of ease and comfort sober, I'm going to drink again. I'm a relief-seeking missile. So it says, yes, there is a substitute, and it is vastly more than that, vastly more than a substitute to alcohol. It says it is a fellowship in Alcoholics Anonymous. There you will find release from care, boredom, and worry. Your imagination will be fired. Life will mean something at last. The most satisfactory years of your existence lie ahead. Now that is a promise. That is a promise. But now it's going to talk about this in the next paragraph, but I've been spoiling things all over the place today, so I don't have the patience to wait for us to get there. So I'm going to tell you what we're talking about now. And what I will talk about, and I don't want to belittle meetings, because I love meetings. I've always been, I'm one of those people, I never had any sort of trouble getting to meetings. And then for some reason, I would get a lot of sponsees that don't like going to meetings. I'm like, just go. That's the easiest thing. You got to sit there, the free coffee. You know, if you're on Zoom, you don't got to wear pants so long as you keep the camera up. It's easy. You know what I mean? It's the easiest thing. Right? Like that's great. But it is not the solution. But we all know, I think we all know what it's like. Many of us, where we go to a meeting and there is something that happens there. There is something that you can feel. And we feel that lift, a little bit of a lift, and we feel better. Maybe we feel a little bit more connected, maybe a little lighter. And that is true. But the meetings, the fellowship that we're talking about is deeper than that. It is the fellowship that is created as we carry this message to others. That's the fellowship we're talking about. So I want to be very clear. I'm not discounting how much meetings can help. And man, it makes it easier to do a thing when you're around other people that are doing the thing. You know what I mean? And actually, we all know what it's like when we're avoiding a certain spiritual action, whether it's an inventory we got to write, an amends we got to make, or a sponsor's telling us, get a sponsee. And we're like, I don't want to, you know, and you go to a meeting and guess what they're talking about? The exact thing that we're avoiding. Right? Now, you guys would never avoid any spiritual action. You're right on top of it. But for somebody like me, I know that feeling. And so I don't want to discount that. But what they're referring to is the fellowship that happens as we carry this message to others. That's what we're talking about. And I'm going to break down a little bit more about this promise. When it talks about, there you will find release from care, boredom, and worry. What was my life like before Alcoholics Anonymous? And what was my life even like kind of going to meetings, but not recovered? I'll tell you about me. I've never really been somebody that was like bored. I think probably because I'm so all over the place. I'm like, oh, what's this? Oh, what's that? But boredom, not that one. But I've worked with people that are like, boredom's a real thing for me. I'm like, can't relate. But I spent my whole life in worry, whole life in anxiety. And then release from care, like that constant trying to control and manage things that were outside of myself. Like that's what we get freedom from. And when we talk about our imagination being fired, you know, when you're having that creative, like, oh, let me do that. Like that's what we get to experience. This creativity, this flow, and there's often a connection with a power greater than ourselves when we're connected. And it talks about life will mean something at last. See, I don't know about you, but for me, my life felt incredibly meaningless when I got here. And in fact, I know that to be true because I was trying to end it. If I'm trying to end my life, I don't hold it in high regard. But my life has meaning and purpose, and that's what we get to find. And this is powerful. It says the most satisfactory years of your existence lie ahead. That is a powerful promise. That's a powerful promise. And it's not saying if you get here young enough. No, regardless of when you get here. The most satisfactory years that you will get to experience happen after the spiritual experience, after we begin to live this as a way of life. That is powerful. And it says, thus we find the fellowship, and so will you. So that's our experience with the fellowship. And we know that it will be yours. But how do we find this? And it says, how is that to come about, you ask? The book meeting us where we're at. Because we're like, all right, okay, that sounds better than what I've got. Fine, show me how I get that. Where am I to find these people? And this is why I'm talking about it's more than just meetings. It says, you are going to meet these new friends in your own community. Oh, friends. Hi, friends. You might be like, I don't know you. I don't know. Hi. That's way nicer than I don't know her. Ooh, camera off. So it says, you are going to meet these new friends in your own community. Near you, alcoholics are dying helplessly, like people in a sinking ship. Make a little note to see page 17. We're going to pop there in just a second. If you live in a large place, there are hundreds, high and low, rich and poor. These are future fellows of Alcoholics Anonymous. So as we continue on with that reading, what we're going to see is, how do I find the fellowship? You see, this book was written to go out into the world. And I might be an alcoholic and the only sober alcoholic in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, or the only sober alcoholic in Simcoe, Ontario, or the only sober alcoholic. I can't do everyone's geography. I'll hit Chicago and I'll hit Phoenix and that'll be good for today. But I might be the only sober alcoholic living in these places. And I get a copy of this book. And I'm meant to read and follow the directions. And that will allow me to stay sober and work with others. And so it's a privilege that we have to have meetings, to zoom in and to be around each other. That many people, when they first got this book, didn't have. That we carry this message to others, and as a result, the fellowship grows. Now, let's pop over to page 17, because it's talking about that sinking ship. So let's go back and let's see what it's talking about, because this is a beautiful tie-in to what we saw kicking off there as a solution. Second full paragraph, we are average Americans. All sections of this country and many of its occupations are represented, as well as many political, economic, social, and religious backgrounds. We are people who normally would not mix, but there exists among us a fellowship, a friendliness, and an understanding which is indescribably wonderful. And that's what we're talking about, fellowship. We are like the passengers. Here's the shipwreck. We are like the passengers of a great liner, the moment after rescue from shipwreck, when camaraderie, joyousness, and democracy pervade the vessel from steerage to captain's table. So from the very poorest of the poor to the richest of the rich. I'm not breaking it down as much as I typically do when we're at that part, just in respect of time. But Vivian's not here to tell me to end on time, so I'm probably going over. And feel free to send all your complaints to Vivian. She will take them in actually any format. If you want to complain to me, I only take it in 4-column inventory or by carrier pigeon. Those are the only ways I take complaints. But I think Vivian's pretty open. All right. So it says, our joy, however, our joy and escape from disaster does not subside as we go our individual ways. The feeling of having shared in a common peril is one element in the powerful cement which binds us. But that in itself would never have held us together as we are now joined. So the common peril is our alcoholism, the allergy of the body, and the obsession of the mind. And when we're in a vision for you, we're talking about we are going to find those people who are drowning, those people who are in those sinking ships, who must find a solution, who have the same problem that we have. But if all we have is the common problem, we're not going to be bound together. And it says the tremendous fact for every one of us is that we have discovered a common solution. The common solution. We have a way out. on which we can absolutely agree, and upon which we can join in brotherly and harmonious action. So our common solution is the spiritual awakening, and what we are joining in brotherly and harmonious action is with the 12 steps. And so it is the 12 steps that allow us to help those sinking alcoholics, to bring them to that spiritual awakening. And so that's a beautiful, so before on page 17, we are reading it and we're the drowning alcoholics. We're the ones that are drowning. And we are saved by this course of action in the spiritual awakening. And now we get to go back and save others. So let's go back to page 152. And that'll be the last bounce, and I'm wrapping it up. I'm wrapping it up here after this paragraph. So it says, bottom paragraph 152, you are going to meet these new friends in your own community. Near you, alcoholics are dying helplessly like people in a sinking ship. If you live in a large place, there are hundreds. High and low, rich and poor, these are future fellows of Alcoholics Anonymous. Among them, you will make lifelong friends. You will be bound to them with new and wonderful ties, for you will escape disaster together. Right? So we're bound together, not just in the experience of drowning with the allergy and the obsession, but the common experience of the spiritual awakening in these 12 steps. And this is how we know that I'm not just making things up and bouncing around for no reason, because it says, and you will commence shoulder to shoulder your common journey. That common journey is these 12 steps as a way of life. That's what the common journey is. And shoulder to shoulder, that no one here is better than anyone else. I've been sober a while. That doesn't make me better than anyone else. And no worse than, no better than. We are all equal, and we are walking and moving on this road together. And it says, then you will know what it means to give of yourself, that others may survive and rediscover life. And this is something that needs to be experienced. But everything that I was looking for in that bottle, that ease, that comfort, that relief, that release, everything that I was looking for in the bottle, I found in the eyes of an alcoholic as they began to recover, as we took the steps together. That's what I was looking for, and I did not know it. And again, if you're new and you've not had that experience, you're going to be like, I'm sorry, you're telling me what I got, from like 3 shots of whiskey or like a 12 pack, I'm going to get from working with a newcomer? Okay, then. But really, that's how you know this whole thing's experiential, because it seems like I'm out of my mind, but it works. It really does. And we know what it's like when we're working with somebody and we see that light come on, and we see that person who they always were begin to emerge. And it is the most incredible thing. And it says, you will learn the full meaning of love thy neighbor as thyself. And I have a dear friend, his name's Babe, and he talks about how, God doesn't have any grandkids, he doesn't say no stepkids, but, God's got no grandchildren, only children. The God's got no stepkids. I often feel like God's little stepchild at times, but no, there are no stepchildren, only children. I am never away from God's love. It'll feel like that when I'm blocked. It'll feel like that when I'm disconnected. But it is also a reminder that I will never look in the eyes of someone that God does not love. Now I know the immediate response of, I'm not looking, but that is true. I will never look in the eyes of someone God does not love. So that is more than enough for me. I am going to wrap it up there.